This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd Neiman.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Ferd Neiman here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Got another guest here. He's a client, he's a friend, he's a great inspirational guy in the industry. He's got some tips, some tricks, some lessons learned to share with us today. Please help me welcome my guest, Cory Harelson. Cory, thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm pumped to be here. Thanks, Ferd.
Yeah, well, I know we were talking a little offline, and I know you've got some lessons learned you want to share, which I'm eager to hear and appreciate that. But first, maybe tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into MH, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So about 10 years ago, I was working as a structural engineer, pretty burned out, like 60 to 80-hour weeks, which was fine up until I had kids. And at that point, I had my first kid. He was not quite 2 years old, and I just felt like I was never getting to see him. I didn't know about any kind of investing or anything before that. I like to climb, I like to run. I was more focused on just kind of living my life. And then there was one particular week where I was going to work before he would wake up in the morning. I was coming home, he was already asleep. Like I didn't see him awake for a whole week. And it was like Sunday, and it was 5 p.m. or something in the office. I was like, screw this. I'm going home. I'm going to put my kid to bed. Gosh dang it. So I went home. I went to take him from my wife to go like give him his bath and put him down and everything. And he looked at me like he didn't even know me, started freaking out, stranger danger, crying, trying to get back to mom. And that like broke my heart. So that was when I was like, that kind of just freaked me out. And I didn't know what to do, but I was like, I know I can't do this forever. So I had to figure something else out. So I did whatever a lot of other people did. Someone eventually gave me a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I went, oh my gosh, right? Assets that pay you. This is genius. Why didn't I think of that? And so I was resolved. I was going to go invest in real estate. And so I picked a niche. I decided we were going to do duplex, threeplex, fourplex. Because they said, you got to just pick a niche and figure it out and go. So I'm an engineer. So I built a bunch of spreadsheets, started analyzing deals, and I quickly got discouraged. Even back then, like I'm in Boise, Idaho. So the price to rent ratios, like it didn't look like anything was stuff was just barely going to cover the mortgage kind of stuff as far as what the rents would do. And I stumbled across a mobile home park for sale on Craigslist of all places.
Oh, wow.
I was like, that looks funny. So I punched that into my spreadsheet. I was like, oh, those numbers look much better. That was back when the prices were a little friendlier in mobile home parks.
It's like a 12 cap, and you're like, I can make that work.
Yeah, something like that. It was a little like 9 lot thing. I didn't end up buying that one, but that got my wheels spinning. So I started Googling, and I found all the Frank Rolfe stuff, and like, oh, mobile home park investing, it is a thing. And I remember I knew one person in the world who invested in real estate, my buddy Matt. I took him out for a beer, and I said, Matt, I'm thinking of doing something crazy, and I need you to talk me out of it, and I need you to tell me why. He said, oh no, I know guys who invest in those. They're great. So we ended up just we got a list from the title company, sent out a bunch of letters, and back then I just got a whole bunch of responses back and kind of laid them all on the table and said like, we'll take that one. And so, yeah, that was the first. So the first park we bought was a 12-unit park, like 10-minute bike ride from my house. So
nice. So that's how times have changed on getting high response rates and finding deals that easily, right? It was so much easier 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But yeah, your story is not unlike a lot of others who, corporate burnout or, hey, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad has probably led to more people to have job dissatisfaction than any other book. And then Frank Rolfe, the guru, has got all the expertise in his boot camp. Yeah, a lot of people, I feel like 2/3 of my guests have been like, yeah, I went to the boot camp, and I did too. I actually owned 2 parks before I went there. And then I went there. So I probably made some extra mistakes on the first couple, but
yeah, I did. I didn't do the boot camp until I was 5 parks in, and then I was like, okay, that's all my money now for real. And then I had some friends and family say like, hey, take my money and do this too. This is cool. I was like, I probably should do the boot camp just to make sure I am not missing anything before that was like 5 years into it too. But so yeah, I waited a while to do the boot camp.
It's a good return on investment to go to the boot camp for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, but it
So
was
maybe
good.
tell
We
us.
used the HELOC on it. So like we just like we used the HELOC on the house for the down payment, and then we like as the cash flow came in and we were saving, I was saving money for my job too. We would pay the HELOC down and then go pick up another one and another one and another one. That's how we did the first few. So
Yeah, no, I think I'm biased like you, but I think MH is better than the duplex business. I had used to do single family and duplex, and then it just became so hard to scale, became hard to get debt because once you didn't fit in the when I got to 10 single family and duplex, I
mm,
didn't fit in the box anymore, so I couldn't do 5% down or 10%. I had to do 25% down. Well, it takes a while to save 25% down.
right.
5% down is much easier, especially I was still working. I had a job paying for it. My dad was kicking in half, and then we had assets one through whatever, and they were kicking in cash flow, so it was easier. But then, man, when you didn't fit in the box anymore, it became more challenging for sure. Well, tell us maybe some stories of some of your deals that have things you lessons learned that worked out really well, maybe lessons learned that didn't go as well that you've been able to use on the next deal, or at least you got for the future deals if you haven't tackled it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had I've got both. I've got a bunch of deals that went really well. And it seemed like the common denominators on those were that we got them at a good price, and then they had like value you can add, right? Like we don't go shooting rents up like a ton overnight, but if they're charging less than everybody else around, and there's empty pads that we could fill, that's kind of been the common denominator. I did have one deal that went not good. Thank goodness it was just my own. I didn't have any investors on it. But it was, and it would have been good. I made one, so there's one mistake. So maybe this is a good takeaway, because if I had done one thing different that would have taken me probably an hour, it would have been a home run.
Oh, wow.
So I bought these first few parks that were like little parks, and filled the vacancies, did a bunch of stuff, and then I cash out refi. I sold one, I cash out refi another, and I scaled up into a slightly big. It was like a 51 pad park in Michigan, with a wastewater treatment plant. I bought it right in the COVID dip, so right in, I think I got it under contract in March or April of 2020. For a really good price. It was a nice park, tenant-owned homes, paved streets, right on the river. There's stand-up paddle boarders going by.
Oh,
It
wow.
was pretty well maintained, but it had a wastewater treatment plant. Couldn't have septic because it was too close to the river, and there was no city sewer. It was city water, but wastewater treatment plant. So that kind of scared me. So I did all the research I could and figured out, okay, how do you do due diligence on one of these things? And I talked to the operator. I had it inspected. I talked to the city, the county, the state, the federal EPA, like everybody. They were issuing reports every day with the readings for the water. Everything was tip top. It was fine. It was totally clean, had a competent operator. So we did end up buying it. And one thing I did not do, which I should have done, and like I said, it would have taken probably a total of an hour of my time, was that for the insurance, it was in a building, and the insurance, we insured it to, in the appraisal, they had a recommended like replacement value that we used to set the insurance limits on it. And I should have
Okay.
second guessed the appraiser. I should have contacted, in hindsight, if I were going to do it again, um, had I just reached out to some contractors who do these things, or the manufacturer, or someone to figure out how much these things cost, it was way off the insurance limit. And so everything went fine for a year or so. And then I was getting ready to go on a hunting trip. It was Saturday. I got a text on Saturday evening from the property manager that there was a fire, and the building burned down and totaled the wastewater treatment plant.
Oh, wow.
Um, and yeah, it was bad. And so then, so it totaled the plant. And I guess fast forwarding a little bit, once I start figuring out, I start to, unfortunately, I had a civil engineer, because we were actually looking, I had him doing a report on the plant, because I wanted to see, we were looking at upgrades, like, can we convert it to UV or something? Would that be more efficient? So I actually had a civil engineer, fortunately, who had just like several weeks earlier, um, done a study on it. And I had just gone in like a month before. I was like, I had all these parks, I have all this cash flow, I had a bunch of cash in the bank. I was like, I'm financially independent. I went in to quit my job. My boss convinced me to stay part-time, thank God.
Oh,
This is like a month later, this thing burns down, and it turned so we had it, the limit from the appraisal was $70,000 was the insurance that we had on it, and the cost to replace it ended up being $670,000.
oh my gosh.
And then that wasn't even the worst part. It even gets worse because we had some other insurance things that kicked in, including like $100,000 of extra coverage, but the temporary pumping, because the thing was down and we still had a community there. The temporary pumping was $800 a load with 2 to 3 loads a day. Worked out to around 50 grand a month. And the park was only grossing 25 grand a month. Um,
Oh my gosh. So what did you do? Just give it back, or
so,
did you
well,
have
I
to
mean, I'd already
absorb it?
had it a year. So I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't know what to do. We have this $100,000 kicked in to cover the pumping. So we had 2 months. I basically had 2 months to figure something out. So I'm calling everybody I know. I don't know what to do. I called Frank Rolfe. I called all these different people. And finally my buddy Blake gave me the best advice. He's like, you just got to call your lender. So I was like, do I just evict everybody and then at least the 50 grand stops? And then, but then like, what, I can't sell it like this. Like I had no
Right.
clue what to do. So I just called my lender, and thank God he's a real John Metternach at First Secure Capital is awesome to work with. He saved my butt. Like we looked at it together. I was like, John, I don't ever want to be the person that doesn't pay something back, but I don't know what to do here. Like, here's the situation. I'm lost. And we looked at it and he was like, well, you bought it at a really good price. We had, brought in homes, and we had put Metron meters and build back water and sewer and, all the stuff to raise the value. And we looked at it and the value was enough. He was able to issue like a fast cash out refi on the equity. Um,
Really?
and we ended up with about 200,000 of insurance total. I put my whole life savings into it, plus kind of maxed out my HELOC. I dumped a bunch of money into it. And we ended up getting it. We did the project. We got it replaced with brand new wastewater treatment plant. It was a bunch of months of hell going through EPA reviews, and every round of review took them forever. And I'm just like, the clock is ticking, 50 grand a month. Like, but we got it done. It was October when it burned down. We were online with the new one in June. We got it replaced. And then I was still going to be screwed because the cash out refi I did had a 1 year, it was like a 1 year balloon. We had to like refi the whole thing into another loan. And that was right when interest rates were
Yeah.
skyrocketing. And so I was like, oh, I still might be hosed. So we then listed the park and sold it. So I ended up, it was a $1.2 million project at the end of it for the wastewater treatment plant.
Just for the
200,
just for the whole treatment plant. So the insurance issue, the fire cost you basically 1.2 minus 200,000.
right, minus 200. So it was $1 million. It was a $1 million net worth hit effectively. Yeah, because it was 1.2,
Dang.
insurance covered two. And then
And
we
you're
had
still in the business. That's what's crazy. Is you bought another one. And now you're the expert on
Well, we
treatment
we
plants.
sold it. We sold it for 750 more than we bought it for. So it ended up being, it's still, I'll call it like a college tuition in infrastructure replacement. So I lost about 250. That's the only one I've lost money on. But so what I did is I took that then and I said, okay, now I at least know how to do an infrastructure project. So we actually found another park in northern Illinois where the owner was in a similar situation, because I would have sold that thing at a fire sale if
Right.
somebody had come along and could get me out of that. Like, I was losing sleep. I was having teary conversations with my wife. Like, I think we're gonna, I mean, it was recourse debt. Like, I think we're gonna lose the
Yeah.
house. We're gonna have to, like, it was
Wow.
awful. I mean, it was the most stressful 9 months of my life. But so then we found one in Northern Illinois where the owner was in a similar situation. The well water system was like about to fail. And he had equity in the park, but didn't have the capital to replace the system. So we got quotes and we bought we basically, we had a purchase price and then he credited us back most of the funds for the replacement. So we bought that, we replaced the well water system. And so now we've got super low basis super low basis park with brand new infrastructure, brand new, it's still private utilities, but brand new private utilities in Northern Illinois. Yeah, so trying to just put my college degree to use there, I guess. But so
Well,
that's the,
that's
if there's a tip there
it's an
on it, I guess
advantage you
it's
have now. I mean, it was expensive, but it's an advantage because you're going to be able to pick up more private utility parks than the average guy because everybody else is intimidated by them, and you're like, and you like know how bad they are to deal with, but you're like, okay, it's just a number, and I know the process, and there's a skill in learning the process, so you
right.
can likely pick those up. You know, if I'm going to discount them 500,000, you're going to discount them 200,000 and 50 for the actual cost and 50,000 for the brain damage, and then you're going to win more bids and know you can, operate them successfully.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's like if you have the right funds to do it, then it's kind of it's a fun the stressful part wasn't that we had to replace the wastewater plant. It was that I thought I was gonna lose our house and go
Yeah,
bankrupt.
it was an unplanned expense. Had it been in the
Yeah,
budget, then okay, it's
exactly.
just a construction project.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a construction project, and now you've got at the end of the day, you've got a screaming deal. So, yeah. So that
Wow.
was anyway. So there's a lesson learned. Double check your or don't take your appraiser's word for your insurance limits.
So how did I'm trying to think, I've only seen a few treatment plants, but my recollection is it's basically just metal and pumps and all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. How did the fire consume all that? I mean, some of that stuff feels like it's not flammable.
It's not flammable, but steel. So I actually know this from the construction industry. Steel's actually not very good in a fire. Like think like the World Trade Center was the jet fuel melted the. It doesn't burn, but in the heat it doesn't perform well if it gets too hot. So this one was in a building. It was in like a pole barn kind of thing. It was in a building. So the building is actually what caught fire and collapsed on it, and then the burning, like it was all just warped and
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Sorry to hear. Glad you survived it and learned to get an extra college degree out of it, but
Yeah, extra
it's an
college degree.
expensive college.
Unfortunately, the other parks have done well enough to more than make up for the losses on that one. But
Wow.
yeah, there's a
So that
mistake.
sounds like a hard project. Tell us your
Lessons learned.
easiest project or the one that went better than planned.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got so my very first deal we filled it up. We actually we filled it up. We brought rents up. We ended up over 5 years. I cashed out refi to buy that one there, and then I also 1031'd it like a year and a half after that. But we ended up like at the end of the day, it was like a 9x on our money in five
Nice.
years. So,
Yeah.
so that, like
Yeah.
that one. So my very first deal, way more than made up for that one. And then we've got a bunch. So Santa Rita, we've got our Santa Rita Heights deal down in Arizona where we bought it, and we've like more like 2.25 on the NOI. So like we've more than doubled the revenue in 3 years,
Nice.
just by filling up empty lots. The manager was terrible when we took it over. Like everybody hated the manager. He wasn't doing a good job. They were paying him $30,000 a year plus a free place to stay. And so we, like a lot of folks probably use like the rent manager in Zigo. So we've got it all automated where the whole collection system is basically automated. So the on-site manager doesn't have to be a bill
Right.
collector and go trying to collect checks from their neighbors. So they're basically just get to be the good guy or good gal and solve problems. And so we were able to find a way better manager who's happy, who was like happy to like wants to do it, wants to see the community improved for way less money. So we saved money there. We infilled stuff. We infilled lots.
Now, when you
We
infill, does your preference new homes or used homes, and then do you like to rent them or sell them or RTO? What's the
So
preference?
we like to sell them if we can. And so that's like what where we're at now is we're kind of one of our big criteria when we buy is like trying to see if we can get places where we can actually sell the homes because then you can recycle your capital, right? So you can it's way because if you the problem with renting them is you don't get your capital back. So then if you've got a bunch to do, you need to have a whole bunch more. So like and then new versus used right now, like I really like in Ohio and Kentucky because there's a lot of used homes over there, and so the infill's been a lot easier. We've had a challenge in some of our other locations finding just sourcing used homes.
Right.
So new homes are great too, but it just seems like it's some markets are hard because you got to sell them at like 70 or $80,000 these days for a single wide. So um, if we can if we're in the right market, then I think the new homes are good. But
No, I hear you. Same thing. We've got some markets where we've sold new homes left over right, but then The other markets were like, we could never sell a new home, or we'd lose 30,000 on it. It's like, we can't, that's not a good business model. And then,
Right.
yeah, some of those parks where we've had challenges is it's not a new home market, and then we can't find used homes. And it's something we didn't do a good job in our diligence of, is assessing, are there enough used homes in the market? Because like, you're not going to buy 25 used homes the month of closing. So but
Right.
I didn't, I probably should have looked harder and like, are there any used homes within 4 hours? And if there's zero today, there's probably zero next month too, or there might be zero. And if I'm going to need to infill 4 a month or 2 a month even, good grief, where am I going to, where am I going to find
Exactly.
homes?
Yeah, like our Arizona parks like that. There's not a lot of used homes down in that Tucson area for some reason, but we could sell new homes there, so it's fine. We're
Right.
100% occupied. But yeah, some of the other areas it's tricky. So that's why I really like Ohio, because there's used homes on every corner, it seems like.
Really?
Um,
Are they from in town, or are they from a park, or are you out in the country?
the biggest, so we've kind of just put the word out that we're looking for them. So like the movers that we use will tell us sometimes when they come across one. We've had a good success from the repo folks. So we've bought some of those where they've effectively, the tenants have defaulted, so they've now taken ownership of this home and it's on someone's land somewhere. And so we've actually had a good source from them, like the Vanderbilt people.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so those have been some good sources.
I've done a little. I've only bought a couple repo, but well, the challenge I've had in my markets have been, the list comes out now. You've got 5 minutes to decide to buy it. You got to put them. It's going to be gone by dinner. And if you want to go look at it, you got to stop what you're doing, and it's priced almost to what I'd sell it for. So it's like, I've kind of almost given up on them in my markets, where it's like, I'm going to sell this home for 35 grand after I ship it, renovate it, install it, sell it. And they're asking 30 right now. And there's only 20 pictures, and I got to decide within the next 90 minutes if I'm going to wire them 30
My
grand.
my business partner Thomas is pretty good at negotiating that. He'll figure out what they've got their quota, and they've got their quota deadline. So there's like a point in the month sometimes,
Okay.
when they're more motivated to drop the price. But yeah, for sure, you got to figure out what can you sell it for, what's it going to cost to move it, set it up, put steps, like all the utility hookups. Yeah, so you got it, but you can haggle with those guys.
Okay. Well, I should have, I guess. I'll call Thomas and engage him to negotiate, I guess. That's good. Okay. What other tips or stories you want to share, Cory?
Yeah, so maybe the park, we bought a park last May over in Lexington that's pretty good. It's really really great. It's awesome. It's like my favorite. Like I love the ugly park in the nice neighborhood. And this was like, there's like rolling hills and horse farms, and we went out to the park and there's bulldozers in the tract of land behind it putting up a McMansion neighborhood. And then there's this old park that was just overgrown with trees and the roads were crap. And the previous owner kind of was doing the best job they could, but they had been kind of at loggerheads a little bit with the county and arguing over stuff. And we so far it's my favorite project we're doing so far. So we came in, it was a good enough deal that we could bring enough capex to do a bunch of work to the park. So we repaved the roads, did a whole bunch of trees. It was way overgrown, like a whole bunch of tree work. We're bringing in homes, we're selling them, and the county has, at first was a little skeptical, like, are you guys going to do what you say? But we've, it's look like the transformation of it is super cool, and the community's getting on board. The county's likes us now and is working with
Nice.
us, and so we've got the install permits rolling, and so yeah, I guess that's maybe one thing, is just doing what you say you're going to do, and um trying to catch.
Yeah, we just had one in Iowa. I was surprised. One of my maintenance guys or the construction managers told me, yeah, I was talking to the city codes enforcement guy the other day, and I was like, oh no, here we go. And he said, yeah, he's nominating you for a city award for the transformation. I was like, wait, I didn't know they had those. Like, what? He's like, yeah, there's some sort of city award, because we did pave the streets and we demoed the homes and cut down the trees, and there was a bunch of crappy RVs the park's mostly MH, but it had 5 or 6 RVs and they were barely livable. And so the city actually condemned them and then gave us 5 grand to get rid of them and clean the site. And then the
Oh,
city
wow.
like indemnified us for, they got a judgment in this from these on these people's homes. Just the city took these people's homes and said, "You guys get rid of them. We'll kick in 5 grand." We had a brothel at one of the
Oh
homes.
gosh.
Yeah, it was like 9 cars of guys there all the time, and the city helped condemn that. So we, no, they were huge, but we were able to, transform it as well. And we still got to do the infill. That's, we spent a lot of money on it, but now we got to get the occupancy up. But
Yeah.
it's in a
I
good
like those
location.
ones though. Those are fun. Like it's super cool to just see the, I don't know, the before and the after is really, really neat. And then it's like good location and it's got great, it's direct build utilities, which is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And so yeah, if I could find more of those, that's like if I could find more like ugly parks and great locations with great utilities, that's my,
Right.
what I
Tell
like a
us a little
lot.
about your management style. I know you utilize VAs, pretty effectively. Can we share a little bit about how that works in your operational structure?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our other entity that's our property management arm. So we're managing our own parks. I started by kind of trying to automate as much as we could. So a lot of people use Rent Manager, but there's so much you can do in that thing if you take the time as far as the automations of it. So there's a ton of stuff that we've automated in Rent Manager, and then we started hiring out folks. So the way we're structured, we'll typically have an on-site manager, but whose role is much more limited than traditional. So they're not doing bookkeeping, they're not doing collection. They might hand out notices or something if we need them to, but they're not doing collections. Um, and then what we've got is so we've got 4 remote employees. Two are down in Guadalajara and 2 are over in the Philippines. And so the Guadalajara is pretty nice because they're the same time zone. They actually like one of them lived in Canada, one of them lived in the US. Their English is really good. Like you would never know they were not even in the country. They've got visas. They can actually travel to the US. So they're awesome team members. And then our folks in the Philippines are great too. So we've got the kind of more like interface with the on-site managers is through our folks in Guadalajara, and they're running collections. They're getting on the phone with people who want to buy home. They're sourcing homes, coordinating with contractors. I mean, you can do so much remotely, right? And then they'll just have the person on the on-site manager if they need to show someone where it is or hand out a notice. Yeah, and they're really great. And they're passionate. They love what they do. It's cool. And because they speak Spanish, that helps a lot too, especially if you've got some parks in like Hispanic speaking areas. Yeah, and then I've got an assistant over in the Philippines that helps me with kind of a lot of we're raising some capital now, so she helps me with a lot of the capital raising side of things, and then our bookkeepers over in the Philippines too, and she's awesome. She's like she had read Rich Dad Poor Dad, like she's they're
Oh,
everybody they're all college educated, like awesome people. And it's like I had kind of gone in like, oh, if you're hiring VAs, like how much can you do remotely and what can they actually do? Like they're awesome. Like they're college
yeah, we've
educated,
we've gone
born
that
and raised
route
here.
more in the last
Yeah.
year or so. We now have several people in the Philippines, several in Mexico. I'm not the one that figured it out or knows all the details of how we sourced them and all that kind of stuff. But I'm curious your experience, like how are you finding the VA and how many
Mm.
how many did you go through? Like I tried a few at first. I'm like, I interviewed several of them myself. And do you speak English? And they say, there's this woman. She said, yes, English, very good, thank you. And I say, well, where did you learn to speak English? Yes, English, very good, thank you. Do you know how to use Microsoft Excel? Yes, English, very good, thank you. I'm
Oh
like, okay.
gosh, yeah, no, we didn't have
Like
that.
wow, it's like I had several that were that bad. They memorized a couple. Like how was this going to work? How did you think this was going to work? And but then now we have other people in the Philippines that are amazing, and so it took a little trial and error.
So I've hired I've only had to let one go. So one of them I made the wrong hire and let her go after a week. The other 4 have all been so the process, here's the process we do. So it's I cobbled this together from several places, but so you put the job ad out, you're trying to just get as many people in as possible. So the first thing you do is you want to use a keyword in your job ad and you want to put it like way down, like 2/3 the way down in the middle of a paragraph. hey, make sure, we'll use like a Google form typically that we have them fill out. And like, we'll say in to answer the question, how did you find out about this ad? Please use the word, whatever, octopus or something, some random,
To see if they read the details. Yeah.
exactly. And so then that automatically filters out like 80% of the people who didn't read the whole thing. And so now so you get 100 people apply. Now you're down to 20. And so then for those 20, you can kind of go read their responses, and maybe you get it down to 10. And so then you have them do, this is all before you ever waste your time talking to anybody. So then you have them do a test task, which you try to gear it towards what you're asking them to do. But so if it's a bookkeeper, maybe it's like something with a spreadsheet. If it's someone else, maybe it's, hey, how would you answer this email? Some kind of like simple 5 or 10 minute test task. And then the key is, they not only do they do the test task, you also ask them to record a Loom video where they're explaining how they did the test task. And then we have our core values. We ask them to explain what the core values mean to them. And so then you get these Loom videos back so you can hear them. So if they don't speak good English, you would hear that in the Loom video before you ever waste your time interviewing them. And so then that whittles it down. And so then by the time you get to your top 2 or 3 people, now they're probably really good people at this point, and you already know they speak English. You already know they're tech savvy because you've had them do something with a spreadsheet and a Loom and all this stuff. You've already heard them speak, and now
you're making them work.
You like 2 or 3 people, and you've got the 2 or 3 best ones. So that's the process we did, and we're 4 for 5 on 4 for 5, I would say. So pretty good batting average.
No, that's good. Some law firms do that, and it's funny because they get some of them have taken advantage of people where they'll say like, hey, like let's say they're in the middle of a lawsuit against some trucking distribution company and they don't have any experts on it. They'll post a job for a new associate legal research attorney, and they're in the interview process. They'll be like, okay, we want a sample memorandum on, let's just pick something. How about trucking distribution in Missouri and liability exposure for the insurance company or something? And they give this person the task, and it's like 5-hour task. But it's a $100,000 job. So people do all this great work, and they end up getting like 10 memos, and then they have all the high skilled grunt work done, and then they finish it. Well, some of these firms got caught because they were not really hiring. They just wanted free outsourced legal work. And then they didn't hire any of the people. But then one of the people found out that their work product was used in an actual lawsuit. So they sent him a big bill for it. The person got in big trouble. But so that there's some range on the test task. It's got to be like, a pretty modest amount of work and more of a sample, not
a couple that we did. We actually we limited the people that we did it for, and we said we would pay you some rate up to 8 hours of your time. So we actually paid them for their time to do it, and that was also, you can also gauge like who maxed out their billing versus who was able to. This isn't something that should take 8 hours, right? So who's
so some people that do, even if it was a 4-hour task and you're paying $10 an hour, and they said it was 8. You paid him the 80, but you realize this is not the person that's going to get the job.
Right. Exactly.
You really give them the test task? Is that robust? 8 hours? I've never done that.
Yeah, I forget. This was a few years ago. So the more recent ones we did were fast. They were like, it should take you 5 or 10 minute kind of thing. It wasn't, it was just like, do you know how to use Excel, or do you know can you figure out a good way to answer this email, and why did you, and then film a Loom about why you answered it that way. What did we do? I forget what we did for the test tasks, but we definitely, like, one of the questions we asked too, because I wanted people who are proactive. Like, I don't want them to always just be, how do I do that? Like, it's good to ask questions, but you want people bringing solutions. So I guess the other thing we do is, like, in the interview, try to ask questions like hypothetical scenario. Like, one of them, when we were hiring our first guy, Axel, who's rad. He's really good, but we knew a lot of the stuff was going to be like, if some maintenance thing comes up. So we were like, okay, what if there's a water leak and it's Friday and you can't get a hold of us? What would you do? The manager, and so that, some people were like, keep trying to get a hold of you, Google other ways to get a hold of you. It's like, wrong answer. Or she's like, I guess I would look up plumbers and like call a plumber. Like, there you go.
I would just call you over and over again,
Like, you want the person who solves the problem.
No, that's good. So let's talk about predictions. I'm curious. It's January 25 when we're recording this. What's your predictions for the industry this year, next couple of years, whether interest rates or consolidation or regulatory? You got any
Yeah,
down
I think it's already
pricing?
changed a lot, right, from where it was when I started. So it was like in this stage where you could just go buy a park and you didn't even have to do anything to it. It's cash flowing a ton out of the gate, and if you do something to it, it's just even better. Um, I think it's there's still good, you can still get them to cash flow, but I think it's getting closer and closer to like the apartment thing where I think the value add is where it's at, I guess is my thing. So like there's the advantage that you still have in a lot of these parks, at least in the size I'm bought. Like I'm looking at like, call it, I'd love to have 100 pad parks, but I have a hard time finding those that pencil. But the 30 to 80 pad range, call it, is kind of where we've lived. And there's so many of them still that are in a nice area but are ugly. Like you can just drive around and look at some mobile home parks. And so I think a lot of and have empty pads, affordable housing crisis. It's the most affordable form of housing in the country. And there's empty pads sitting there in a place that needs homes. So there's I think there's a lot. I think that's to me like the big opportunity is like trying to find the ones where they aren't what they could be. And like it's that ugly house in the nice neighborhood and really maximizing it. I think that's the advantage it's got because like cap rate wise and everything else, it's getting closer and closer to like apartments and multifamily and stuff. It's still higher caps than those, but it's not like the days of the 10 caps that aren't really around very much anymore. And then the interest rates are high. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like you've kind of got to find the value add for it. But I think there's a lot of those left. So that's what I'm kind of excited about is trying to find those like the ugly park in the nice location kind of thing.
How are you sourcing your deals? You buying them with brokers, direct mail, direct, cold calls?
We've got some that have come through off market, but like actually, it's like every time we say we're going to do this big off market thing, we also reach out to brokers, and then we end up finding we'll get like off market or like not yet listed things from. There's certain brokers that we've worked with that we have a good relationship with, and um yeah, we've been getting pretty good deal flow from them actually. So that's how we found a lot of our deals has been through. There's like a handful of brokers that, and then I try, like, I guess the other thing I try to do is I try not to, like obviously in due diligence, if you find something that you didn't know about and you're like, that impacts it, then you've got to go have a conversation about price. But I guess I also I try to do my underwriting up. I try to do a bunch of underwriting up front before we go under contract and go in with an offer that I actually think will stick, assuming everything we know is true. So that because I know I've sold some parks and people will just put it under contract, not do any inspections, and then 2 days before DD, they just lowball you. They chop several $100,000 out of it. Just like, oh, the numbers don't work. I'm like, you knew the numbers. Like, well, the numbers haven't changed.
I
Um,
just had that. I just had that happen. The guy
yeah,
did a site visit, and he's like, "Oh, and he's a tree guy. He's like, oh, there's trees that are overgrown around the perimeter." And I'm like, "I don't think that's actually my trees. They're around the neighbors." So he goes, "I go, what are you talking? A couple $1,000 bucks? This price is 450 for the park." And he's like, "What are you talking? A few $1,000 bucks?" He goes, "No, it's like 8,000." I said, "Fine. If you close, I'll give you 8,000 because 450 was a good price for me for this park. So, and I really want to sell it. So I was like, all right, if you close, I'll give you 8,000 off." And he got back to me, he said, "I'll pay 315."
yeah,
It's just like you drove the park for 30 minutes and now you want to pay 315. We're under contract at 450. Like
yeah.
what
Or
a
they'll be
waste of
like,
everyone's
oh, the
time.
location. I'm like, you knew the location. Like, what do you mean? Like, do
Oh
your
yeah.
homework ahead of time. So anyway, I think like trying to do that, it seems like that's that's been really well with the brokers that we've worked with and the ones that we've bought parks with like working with us. So they're sending us more deals, which has been really cool. So that's where we've gotten a lot of our deal flow.
That
Yeah,
makes sense.
415. Mine was like it was under contract for 975, that original park I bought to sell. And then they came back and they're like, 750. And the only excuse was like the numbers don't work. It was like go.
I had one I was selling. It was a big price. I sold it for 5.2 million, and they hired a diligence crew to get out there, and they said they found all these problems with it and all this stuff. And one of the problems was they said all of my electrical pedestals were old, were only 100 amp, were rusty looking, and were not up to speed with modern code. And I said, "You're right. The park's from 1960. They're all original. Every single lot is occupied, and every single lot is a tenant-owned home. And presumably, all of those homes have electrical service that's working, or people wouldn't be living there. So, you want me to give you," he wanted like $8,000 a site, which was, like $480,000 or something. No, it was more like, it was like 68 sites. So they were over $500,000. Like, you want me to give you $500,000 for electrical upgrades? Because are you actually going to upgrade all these when you buy them? No, of course you're not. You're just trying to shake me down. And then they said, the trees are a problem. We got $50,000 of tree work. And I said, it was winter. I said, there's no leaves on the trees because it's winter. I said, we did the tree work with the pro before we listed it 45 days ago. I said, tell you what, how about this? How about I get out there with an arborist and I'll get out there Saturday and I'll cut down any dead trees myself. And I'll give you $0 for the trees, but I'll cut down the dead ones and I'll give you $0 for the electrical. And they were like, no, we got this report. It was just a shakedown. And I just said, I'm not doing it. And then they closed, but it was just a shakedown trying to squeeze, $500,000 out of me for no reason. It's so frustrating. So yeah, that's obviously a good tip for brokers, working with brokers, is don't be that guy, and then brokers will like you.
Right, because they only get paid if they close, right? So they want someone.
And they look bad to clients if they select you.
Right.
And I have one client that's bought a ton of parks, and some with a broker. And one deal I was bidding on, and I told him, hey, I can't represent you in this. I'm bidding on the same deal, and I'm pretty sure I bid this. So I think it was like 2.2. My initial bid was 2.2, and the broker came back to me and said, we're going with somebody else. Well, then it'd be my client who closed it, who had in their contract at 2.2 and closed at 2.2. And I asked the broker, I'm like, why didn't you counteroffer me? I would have gone 2.3. And he goes, well, because we sold 10 deals to the other guy and he never retraded once, and we've never done a deal with you, so we weren't sure if you would. So the other guy, we knew the other guy's 2.2 was good. You might have countered up to 2.3, but then you would have retraded 2.1, and I wasn't going to risk my relationship with the seller. So the broker's like, I'm going with the guy that I know's got 2.2. And the other guy had bigger, deeper pockets. So there's, I would have had to go raise money. I was confident that I could, but the other guy was going to just write a check. So certainty of close and probability of close is important to a broker.
Totally.
Yeah. All right, Cory, good stuff. Anything else before we go? And how can people reach out to you after this episode?
Yeah. So I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I can give you my LinkedIn thing. Maybe you can link it. And then we've got, I do have, like a PDF, on like, investing passively, like in a syndication on it. If anybody's interested, it's at passivemhp.com. So that'd be a good way too.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Cory. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Ferd.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.